All the way back in 1999, Toyota released the Yaris, and it quickly became a very popular car and showed no signs of hesitation when it came to collecting big prestigious awards. In 2000, it was the Car of the Year, and that wasn't the only year that the Yaris scooped up that award, winning it again in 2021, proving that Toyota had a winning formula when it came to small city cars. Hi guys, I'm Tish and welcome back to my channel Auto Social UK. In today's video we're going to be looking at the latest generation 2024 facelifted Yaris, and I'm going to tell you all of the changes to this new model. So if that sounds good, then please keep watching, and if you like new car reviews and car content, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Now, did you know that in 2023, this car had actually sold nearly 10 million units worldwide? And it's really easy to see why. It's a very, very good looking compact city car. Now, externally, there's actually been hardly any changes to the Yaris at all. And I don't personally think that's a bad thing, because this was a very good looking car. When it first came out in its latest generation, it had a much wider, much more squat look, and it made it look a lot sportier than it actually is. But that engine was lacking slightly, and this is one of the things that they've improved. Now, one of the significant focuses of this facelift has been under the bonnet, to the engine, so it's now slightly more powerful. Power has gone from 116 horsepower to 129. It's up by about 5%, and that's reduced the 0 to 62 time by 0.5 of a second to 9.2 seconds. So it doesn't exactly sound significant, but the torque has actually been increased by 30%. But whilst I talk about those engine changes, this is mostly to the higher spec models. The Icon, Design and Excel feature the existing 114 brake horsepower petrol hybrid option as before. And if you'd like to know less about percentages and more about actual figures, then both this Premier Edition and the GR Sport models get the Boost, which is still the same 1.5 litre 3-cylinder petrol unit, but it now develops 129 brake horsepower. The electric motor's power has been upped from 59 kilowatts to 62 kilowatts, and the second of the car's motor generator's torque has been increased from 141 to 185 newton meters. That added torque is what Toyota claim is going to alleviate some of that dreaded strain in the car's CVT gearbox, which it's so famous for, as well as giving it a well-needed punch to the acceleration. But I know what you're all saying. Has it actually worked? Well, there's only one way to be able to tell, and to do that I need to do what probably a lot of Toyota Yaris owners don't do, and that's to floor it. And that's to 60. Okay, so there is still some noise from the CVT gearbox, but I wasn't expecting that to be completely eradicated. But it does feel that though there's still quite a bit of noise, there's also quite a bit more power available than previously. The power delivery feels a little bit more linear. Before, there was a lot of noise and not a lot actually happened, but now it feels that though there is slightly more noise, you do have the power there to back it up. And this is far better when you're joining dual carriageways, or if you need to take over someone on a slightly dodgy junction. It means that you're not going to look silly when you go to floor it and then suddenly all you're doing is making a lot of noise and you're not actually going anywhere. Now, it's not a huge difference in power. We're talking about 30% more torque and 5% more power, so you're really probably not going to notice a huge difference. But I do think those subtle changes they've made have made it a better car to drive. Atop of the very short list of changes to the external of the Toyota Yaris is this colourway, featured on this top-spec Premier model. This is called Neptune Blue, and it really is quite striking in person, especially when the sun has decided to show its face. It also comes in a bi-tone colour, so that means you get blue on the exterior paintwork, and you also get a contrasting black roof and black door mirrors. Plus, to give it that premium elevated feel, you also have this darkened chrome bar along the bottom. I really like that. It's a very subtle touch, which I do think makes it look a little bit higher in quality. You also get some new alloy wheel designs, but that's about it. And it's the same story around the back. So the rear of the car remains unchanged, but that does mean you get that fantastic, almost shelf-like central bar, which kind of works as a double spoiler, connecting the rear lights. And you get a similar amount of boot space as you previously did. That means that though the Yaris isn't class leading, it's still pretty competitive. And you do get a nice flush boot floor for loading items in, and even an adjustable boot floor, which is a rarity in this class of car. Whilst there isn't many noticeable changes on the outside of the Yaris, there are some big changes on the interior, and that includes a new infotainment system and digital dashboard. This infotainment system is now much larger and it sits atop the dashboard. This is very similar to the screen that you'll find in the Toyota CHR or also the electric BZ4X. And I'll talk about that in a bit more detail later on. You still get physical climate control dials, and the USB ports have been changed for USB-Cs. You also get wireless charging in the centre on this higher spec model. Elsewhere, the layout is very similar. Now on this Premier Edition, to match with that external blue paint, you also get blue stitching on the seats and blue piping across the dash. Now let's talk about this new digital instrument cluster, because this is one of my favourite features. It feels like it's from a car in the class above, which it is, because it's come out of Toyota's much larger models. And as you change your drive modes, look at that, absolutely fabulous, full screen, really feels very high in tech. But if that's not high in tech enough for you, then if you go for this Premier model, you can even get a head-up display. So let's just for a second imagine that you've never driven or heard about a Toyota Yaris before, and we'll start at 101 Yaris School Day 1. So what is there to know about the Toyota Yaris? Why is it such an economical small car? Well, one of the main reasons is because it's called a strong hybrid. Now, if you haven't heard that term before, or if you've heard the terms strong hybrid, plug-in hybrid, mild hybrid thrown around and you're not too sure about the differences, let me explain for a second. So you've got a mild hybrid. Now, a mild hybrid has a very small battery in the car, and it will kind of help aid with the driving, but it won't run in electric alone. And this means you get a slightly improved mile per gallon figure, but it's not very impressive. Then you have a strong hybrid, which is what the Toyota Yaris very famously is. And a strong hybrid is when the car has a slightly larger electric battery, or two, and it'll actually complement the car when driving, but it will store enough energy to be able to run in electric alone for small journeys. So anytime that you start up the Toyota Yaris, or if you're going around town at very low speeds, then it will default to be in electric. And then as you need a little bit more power and put your foot down, then it will kick in with the engine and they'll work simultaneously together. Now the last one is a plug-in hybrid, and this is when you actually require to charge the battery via a charge point. And that's brilliant for people who can charge at home, but if you can't charge at home, then what you end up doing is you end up carrying around very heavy batteries. So for me personally, nothing gets better than a strong hybrid, and no one is better than Toyota at building a strong hybrid. Now let's talk screens and technology, because I think it's really impressive in this car. As I mentioned, you get this new 12.3-inch screen, and I think that this is fantastic. It's so bright, it's so logically laid out, and everything is super easy to find. Plus, you still get a physical volume control dial there as well. Now, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is featured on this car, and it's both wireless and wired. So as I plug that in, that will connect straight to your Apple CarPlay, and then look how good this looks on this screen. It's absolutely massive. It's so bright and it's so easy to see when you're driving, especially if you're using something like your maps. Now, the only downside to this screen is the fact that it's slightly in your line of vision. So I'm going to drive in a minute and see whether I think it gets in the way of what you're looking at on the road. But overall, I'm really impressed with this. How am I getting on with this new larger screen? Well, I have to admit, think it's quite brilliant. So Toyota have obviously really thought this through, and though it sits atop the dashboard and it's much higher than the previous generation version, it actually comes up no higher than your line of vision. So currently my line of vision is going right over the top of the touchscreen, and then I can see the full windscreen. It's not impeding any of the screen, and I can also just about see the end of the bonnet as well. So despite being much larger, it's right in the correct place to not be covering my line of view. Now, there is a slight catch when it comes to talking about all these lovely interior and tech changes, because things like the 10.5-inch screen are reserved for XL models and above. This icon and design gets the much more humble touchscreen and humble digital dashboard from the existing model. The Icon model starts at just over £22,500. The Design model adds LED daytime running lights, as well as some slightly smartened up styling for around £1,000 more. If you want that larger screen, then the XL model comes in at £26,700. The sporty GR Sport Styled model with the new engine costs just under £29,000. And lastly, this Premier Edition model, which I've been driving, is just £75 shy of £30,000. Sure, it's fully kitted out with heads-up display and JBL sound system, but that's a fair chunk for a Yaris. There was also an audible gasp in the room when this version was advertised at £426 a month with a £3,000 deposit. So sure, the changes to the latest generation Yaris have been very minimal, but I think that they're all extremely noteworthy and have helped to just give this car a boost into being competitive in its class. To me, it wasn't broke, so it didn't need fixing, but I love some of those new features. That digital dash is really impressive, and it's something that I wasn't expecting. But let me know, what do you think to the changes of the latest generation Yaris? Are you as shocked as me when it comes to some of the prices of those higher spec models? Let me know all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below. What I know for sure is if you're looking for an economical city car, it really doesn't get better than this. But although these higher spec models look fancy, maybe it's the more affordable options which make more sense. If you have enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you guys want to see more like this, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Until next time guys, see you later.